Hi, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I want to try and get to 1 million subscribers. Thank you. This case takes place in the USA in the year 2015. Before we delve into this case, be prepared for a profoundly unsettling and frustrating outcome. This story involves a young victim whose life was tragically cut short, and a resolution that for many fell short of delivering true justice. Meet Tierra Hall. Tierra was born around 1997 to her mother Cotia Pickens and was originally from Texas. There are no current reports to identify Tierra's father, but it is clear that she was raised solely by her mother. Cotia Pickens remembers Tierra as a bubbly and lively child, full of energy and personality. However, beyond these recollections, little public information details Tierra's early childhood. In 2012, Tierra and her mother relocated from Texas to Durham, North Carolina, where Tierra would later attend Jordan High School as a freshman. This move offered a fresh start for Tierra and her mother. She quickly settled into her new school in Durham, where her classmates were drawn to her humor, energy, and lively spirit. Tierra made many close friendships, becoming a positive and well-loved presence in the school community. One of her best friends was Amya Wilson. According to Amya, they instantly clicked and they became inseparable, describing their bond like two peas in a pod. Those who knew Tierra said that she was gentle and had an innocent spirit. She was described as someone who wouldn't hurt a fly. Each morning, she would tell her mother she loved her before leaving for school, always receiving a "I love you" in return. Tierra liked school, and she dreamed of attending North Carolina Central University, one day aiming to study business, with hopes of someday launching her own enterprise. Growing up in a single-parent household, Tierra had first-hand experience with financial challenges and was determined to create a comfortable and stable life for herself. She had a strong drive to rise up above these struggles. During her time at Jordan High School, she started a romantic relationship with a boy named Kelton Fox. Their relationship began normally, with little to no issues, but like many childhood relationships, by November of 2014, their relationship took a turn for the worst, and they entered an on-off phase. Her mother would later say they would be making up and breaking up all the time. However, over the Christmas break, Tierra broke up the relationship, and she broke it up for good. Tierra's mother would later say that she described him as too clingy, but couldn't provide any further details. Having experienced abuse in a previous relationship herself, Tierra's mother was particularly attuned to signs of unhealthy dynamics, although nothing about Tierra's relationship raised any red flags, and Tierra didn't express any major issues that would have concerned her mother. In fact, Tierra's mother described Kelton as polite and respectful, recalling how he would shake her hand and use "yes ma'am" and "no ma'am" when talking to her. He would even walk Tierra home from school, making sure that she got home safely. This respectful demeanor gave Tierra's mother a sense of security around him, leaving her shocked at the events that later unfolded. She believed that he loved her daughter. Kelton Fox lived with his mother on Cherry Blossom Circle in Durham, North Carolina. Reports describe his early life as unstable, with his father abandoning him at a young age. He subsequently grew up in an environment marked by domestic violence, which left him with lasting emotional scars. His background details remain largely private, though it is known that he developed a fascination with weaponry. He owned a wide range of dangerous items, including a hatchet and various knives. Kelton Fox also attended Jordan High School and was in the same year as Tierra. By September of 2014, they were both in their junior year. As I said previously, their relationship started well, and this was well catalogued in Kelton's journal. In the beginning, he wrote loving messages to Tierra, and drew love hearts with the initials K and T within. But as time went on, these messages changed in tone. They became a little bit more intense. Kelton became more and more fixated and obsessed with Tierra. Now next to these love hearts, he would write quotes such as, "It's you and me only." Then more definitive and intense statements like "hubby and wifey for life" and ride or die. Next, there was another transition in the tone of his journal. There must have been some turbulence within the relationship during this time, as he started writing monologues which included things like, "Why can't you just be thankful?" And again, clearly in despair, he began writing things like, "There is a darkness inside me. I am a savage." Experts who later analysed Kelton Fox's journals concluded that he had a severe pathological obsession and a controlling behaviour toward Tierra Hall. These writings reportedly detailed violent thoughts and intense jealousy, showing his inability to cope with their breakup, and he maintained his fixation on possessing her entirely. Kelton became very upset and expressed in his journals how he was suspicious that Tierra had cheated on him. Soon, he began writing with pure hatred. In his journals, Kelton wrote disturbing phrases like, "I'm tired of it all. I am done playing the hero. I will take your soul." He then referenced an uncontrollable lust for blood. These entries reveal what analysts described as narcissistic and sociopathic. On Facebook, Kelton operated under the name King K the Savage, an alias he used both online and in graffiti-styled artwork. He even said that Tierra was his queen. On Friday the 27th of March 2015, Tierra left to go to school. It was just like any other day. It was a mild, overcast day in Durham on the lead-up to spring break, a break which Tierra Hall had excitedly planned to spend with her best friend, Amya Wilson, along with a close-knit group of friends. As Tierra moved from class to class that day, CCTV footage showed her moving with unusual caution, and her demeanour was more reserved than usual. She reportedly looked over her shoulder and checked around corners, like she was trying to avoid someone. Later that afternoon, at 4:16 p.m, Tierra crossed paths with her ex-boyfriend, Kelton. As far as we know, following the breakup, the two still remained friends. The two walked together, talking casually, with nothing appearing out of the ordinary. To an observer, their interaction seemed friendly without any visible tension. Tierra took a moment, and she sat on a row of oddly placed cabinets. Kelton suddenly stepped slightly ahead of Tierra, and in a quick motion, he swiped her phone from her hand. He kept swinging and swinging for the phone. Some suggest that he may have been paranoid, wanting to check her messages or social media to see if she was talking to any other boys, whilst others believe that he knew taking it would provoke her. After finally grabbing Tierra's phone, Kelton took off. In clear frustration, Tierra stepped off of the cabinet, lifted her head, and began following Kelton. At this point, Tierra seemed unfazed. She followed him with a smile, likely assuming that he was just being playful or even flirtatious. However, unbeknownst to her, Kelton allegedly had darker intentions that went far beyond harmless teasing. Kelton led her off the school grounds and into the surrounding neighbourhood, ignoring her pleas for him to stop and return the phone. Determined, Tierra continued to follow, her frustration growing as Kelton pressed forward without even glancing back once. Eventually they both grew tired, but they continued walking through the neighbourhood of Trotter Ridge Road, separated by a steady 25-metre distance. Where was he going, and why was he persisting with this wild goose chase? Kelton led her to a house, 4123 Trotter Ridge Road, which was 2 blocks and approximately 300 metres northwest of Jordan High School. The property at 4123 Trotter Ridge Road was expansive, surrounded by mature trees that gave it an isolated, almost secluded feeling. The land appeared as though it had been carved directly from the surrounding woodland, creating a natural boundary that provided privacy and limited visibility. According to sources, this property was once owned by Kelton's mother, so it's fair to assume that he was very familiar with it. The house was abandoned and positioned approximately 40 metres from the road through a line of trees. The property on Trotter Ridge Road wasn't in disrepair, but it appeared derelict and unfurnished, as though renovations had begun but had been left incomplete. The evidence points to the following likely sequence of events. Kelton led Tierra around the side of the house, heading toward the secluded rear porch. He suddenly stopped, dropped her phone on the ground, and watched as Tierra walked past him to pick it up. With her back turned, Kelton unsheathed a pocket knife and began quietly moving towards her. In a brutal act of savagery, he plunged his blade into Tierra multiple times. At first, she let out a blood-curdling scream, which the neighbours heard, but the preceding onslaught of stab wounds would put a stop to the screaming. Kelton stabbed her at least 14 times, with multiple wounds in and around her face, through her t-shirt into her chest, and more in the neck region. The attack was so brutal and gruesome that part of the knife broke off and was lodged in her cheek. Kelton attacked her with such ferocity that he severed several blood vessels, causing blood to spray across the area. The porch became a grisly scene, with blood splattered along the lower walls, the blue window frames, and the back door. All evidence pointed toward a violent struggle. Tierra Hall tragically died at the scene. After Kelton had brutally attacked and killed Tierra, he used a lighter to burn graffiti into the blue rear door of the house. This message read, "King K the Savage," a reference to the alias he had given himself on social media and in his journals, which symbolized his obsession with control and dominance. The psychological profile of someone who could commit a violent crime, and then inscribe their title as King and label themselves a savage, points towards a person with a deeply twisted sense of superiority and a love for violence. This is something you don't come across often with serious criminals. It is not known where the murder weapon went, so it is assumed that he disposed of it after the killing. After burning the words into the door, Kelton calmly walked away from Tierra's lifeless body, retracing his steps back towards the school. His indifferent return, moving through the same streets without apparent concern, left investigators and the community deeply disturbed. The calculated manner of his departure raised questions about whether his actions were premeditated. At 4:57 p.m., with the crime complete, Kelton returned to the school and headed straight to the restroom. His red sweater was pulled over his hands in an attempt to hide any blood or evidence on his skin. Surveillance footage captured his behavior, further hinting at his awareness and intent to conceal his involvement. The deliberate act of going directly to clean up added to the theory that Kelton's actions were premeditated and calculated. After leaving the bathroom, Kelton reappeared with his hands uncovered, suggesting that he had attempted to clean off any blood from his hands. At some point, Kelton changed into a hoodie and then went to the front office to call his mother to pick him up. Together, Kelton and his mother left school for the weekend.
Durham Communications, you're on a recorded line.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I were just taking a walk, and there's this house that just sold at 4123 Trotter Ridge. So we look in the windows, really nice house. We walk around the back, and there's a lady lying asleep. We think she's asleep, but anyway, she was lying behind the house on the ground, right behind the house. It's exactly 2 blocks before Jordan High.
When the police arrived at the scene and discovered Tierra's body, it was immediately clear that she was deceased. Responders quickly secured the area and established a crime scene. The level of violence indicated at the crime scene left no doubt as to the severity of the crime, prompting authorities to gather evidence meticulously, including the blood patterns and the messages burned into the property's door. The horrific and tragic scene lit a fire in the bellies of the detectives, who became hell-bent on finding whoever had committed such an act of brutality. But first, the detectives needed to identify Tierra. At the crime scene, the police found a pink phone case and black earphones, but there was no phone accompanying them. So, they kept searching. The police then found a slip of paper partially protruding from Tierra's back pocket. This was a hall pass from her high school, authorizing her to leave class on the 27th of March 2015, with a signature in blue ink, but no name. Investigators then reached out to the school for more information. They spoke with the assistant principal, informing him of the murder and revealing that the victim was a student at his school. The police then began to look at the surveillance footage at the school. The assistant principal and the detectives sifted through the camera footage, starting at lunchtime on the day of the murder, looking for a young black girl wearing grey sweatpants and an Elmo t-shirt. They then identified a possible match, so they followed her movements on the camera. They followed her, and a minute later, she walked to the stairwell, and that was when the quality of the image was clear enough to determine that she was the victim. Tierra Hall. The police went to Tierra's home to inform her mother of the tragic news. And with that, Tierra's mother was torn to pieces and her world came to a standstill. Despite her grief, she was able to provide officers with vital information. She shared her daughter's mobile phone number, enabling the police to track the phone's last known locations to determine its position. While canvassing the neighbourhood, a female witness came forward, telling the police that she heard a female screaming on the day of Friday the 27th of March. The police then heard that neighbours had home security systems. Detectives began reviewing the footage, and they noticed a young black man walking alone down the road with a young woman following him around 25 metres behind. Meanwhile, other investigators were reviewing the school surveillance footage. Investigators tracked Tierra's movements until she encountered a young black man wearing a red top, loose blue pants, and a chain around his neck and dreadlocks. He was identified as Kelton Fox. The police watched Kelton on the footage and saw that he entered the bathroom, possibly to wash blood off of his hands. The police swabbed the bathroom where he washed his hands and identified Tierra's DNA. The story was quickly coming together, and the evidence was stacking. The police believed that they now knew who the killer was. On Tuesday the 31st of March 2015, the police believed they had enough evidence to arrest Kelton, so at 11 o'clock, they arrested him for first-degree murder. The police noted that when they asked why he thought he was being arrested, he answered in a strange way. He just mumbled and said, "One of my friends is gone." According to the police, he seemed disinterested, with no fear, panic, or remorse. On the other hand, Kelton's mother broke down instantly with the news. When interviewed, his mother described the scene when she told Kelton that Tierra was dead on the Sunday prior. According to her, when she broke the news, he was devastated. His reaction was of deep distress. When Kelton was interviewed by the police, he started with a lie, saying that he never left the school. But the police knew that he was lying, and they instantly confronted him with the footage. When they searched Kelton's home, they found a green knife sheath with writing all over it. The writing said, "Savage." Upon closer inspection, the police found blood on the sheath. Inside his bedroom, they also found graffiti-style artwork on paper, saying, "King K the Savage," matching the sign at the scene. They also found his journals, which pointed to a possible motive. When the police interviewed Kelton further, they took photographs of the clothing he was wearing. The police were completely surprised when they noticed that his black and white Adidas shoes had spots of blood on them. This blood was tested, and the DNA matched to Tierra. Kelton was charged in the interview room with first-degree murder and placed in jail to await trial. At Kelton's first court appearance, the judge informed him that he could face the death penalty if he was convicted for first-degree murder. However, the public defender, Lawrence Campbell, quietly reminded the court that Kelton was just 17, and therefore he was not eligible for capital punishment due to his age. The judge then acknowledged this and stated that life imprisonment would be the maximum penalty. Though there was insufficient evidence to prove premeditation, the detectives voiced concerns, suspecting that the attack on Tierra may have been calculated. However, given Kelton's age and lack of solid proof for first-degree murder, the prosecution extended a plea deal for second-degree murder. Kelton Fox agreed to the plea deal to avoid a jury trial. His defense team also cited multiple mitigating factors to the case, including a traumatic upbringing, exposure to domestic violence, and ongoing mental health issues. Court records referenced a diagnosis of PTSD, as well as signs of borderline personality disorder, hallucinations, and paranoia. suggesting that Kelton had been unstable for some time. In the end, on Tuesday the 14th of June 2014, at the age of 20, Kelton was given his sentence. He was given 12 to 15 years in prison. Under the terms of his plea deal, Kelton Fox may walk free as early as in his 30s, with the opportunity to rebuild his life outside of prison. There is currently no clear evidence that Kelton Fox has ever expressed remorse or regret for the murder of Tierra Hall. During the court proceedings, he admitted to the killing, but he showed little emotion. This outcome stands in stark contrast to Tierra Hall's fate. Her life was brutally cut short, leaving her family and friends to grieve the future she will never have. The courts put away a very dangerous man, but ultimately, was it for enough time?